Have you ever noticed how a quiet person can change the atmosphere of an entire room without saying a single word? They walk in, they sit down, they observe, and suddenly, people start acting differently. Conversations slow down. Jokes become more careful. Some people avoid eye contact. Others start talking more than usual, almost as if they are trying to prove something. But the quiet person hasn't done anything. They haven't threatened anyone. They haven't judged anyone out loud. They haven't even spoken. So why does their presence make people uneasy? Why do smart, quiet people often make others uncomfortable without trying? The answer reveals something deeply uncomfortable about human psychology. Because most people are not afraid of silence. They are afraid of what silence might mean. Human beings survive through prediction. Every social interaction is built on it. Your brain constantly scans people around you, trying to understand them. It watches their tone, their reactions, their expressions, their words. All of these signals help you build a mental map of who that person is. This map tells you whether someone is safe, predictable, friendly, or dangerous. But sometimes a person gives you almost nothing to work with. They don't overshare. They don't react strongly. They don't constantly explain themselves. They simply observe. And when the brain cannot build a map of someone, it begins to panic. Uncertainty triggers something ancient inside the human mind. Your brain starts asking questions it cannot answer. What are they thinking? Why are they so quiet? Are they judging me? Do they see something I don't? This uncertainty creates tension, and tension often turns into fear. But here's where things get interesting. The quiet person might not be doing anything special at all. They might simply prefer listening. Yet the people around them begin constructing entire stories about who they are. Someone thinks they are arrogant. Someone else thinks they are secretly intelligent. Another person believes they are mysterious or intimidating. All of these ideas come from one thing: silence. Silence leaves empty space in a conversation. And the human mind hates empty space. So it fills the gap with imagination. And imagination is rarely neutral. It tends to lean toward suspicion. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever been in a group where everyone was talking except one person? Eventually, people begin to notice them. Someone whispers, "They're so quiet." Another person says, "They must be observing everything." Another one jokes, "Be careful what you say around them." The funny thing is that the quiet person may simply be tired or introverted, but their silence creates mystery, and mystery creates psychological power. In social situations, people constantly reveal themselves through words. Every time someone speaks, they expose their thoughts, opinions, and emotions. They show their insecurities, their ambitions, their fears. They reveal much more than they realize. But the person who speaks less reveals very little. Instead, they gather information. They watch how people react. They notice small changes in tone. They observe who dominates the conversation and who tries to impress others. Over time, they begin to understand the room. Meanwhile, the room understands almost nothing about them. This creates an invisible imbalance. Imagine playing a card game where everyone places their cards face up on the table, except one person. That person keeps their cards hidden. Who has the advantage? The answer is obvious. And even if the quiet person never intended to create this dynamic, the effect is still there. People feel exposed around someone they cannot read. Now add intelligence to that silence. When a quiet person occasionally speaks with clarity, insight, or accuracy, the effect multiplies. Suddenly, people realize something. This person isn't just quiet. They're thinking. While others are talking, choking, and revealing themselves, the quiet person is analyzing patterns. And that realization can make people deeply uncomfortable, because it forces them to question their own behavior. It makes them wonder how much of themselves they have already exposed. This is why quiet, intelligent individuals often gain reputations they never asked for. Some people think they are intimidating. Others think they are calculating. Some even assume they are dangerous. But the real reason is simpler. People fear minds they cannot predict. In workplaces, this dynamic becomes very obvious. Imagine two employees in a meeting. One talks constantly. They share every idea, even the half-formed ones. They speak quickly and confidently. The other sits quietly. They listen to everyone. They take mental notes. At first, nobody pays much attention to them. But then something happens. After 20 minutes of discussion, the quiet person speaks. And in just a few sentences, they summarize the problem perfectly. They point out something everyone else missed. Suddenly, the room becomes silent. Why? Because their words carry weight. They didn't speak to be heard. They spoke because they had something meaningful to say. And when people realize that someone has been silently analyzing the entire situation, they start to feel slightly exposed. It feels as if they have been under observation the entire time. The same thing happens in social circles. Sometimes the quiet friend becomes the one everyone secretly respects or fears, not because they are aggressive, but because they notice things others overlook. They notice when someone is lying. They notice hidden tension between people. They notice patterns in behavior. And when they occasionally point something out, it can feel unsettling, because it confirms what others hoped no one noticed. But there is another side to this story, a darker side. Some people understand the psychological power of silence very well, and they use it intentionally. Manipulators often prefer listening over talking. They ask subtle questions. Then they let others speak. They remain calm and emotionally controlled. The other person, trying to fill the silence, reveals more and more. Personal details, insecurities, secrets. Over time, the manipulator collects valuable psychological information, and the other person doesn't even realize it is happening. Why? Because people naturally trust good listeners. They feel comfortable around someone who doesn't interrupt them. But that trust can sometimes be misplaced. Silence can be a tool, a very powerful one. Interrogators use it. Negotiators use it. Psychological manipulators use it. They understand something most people ignore. Silence makes people uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people start talking. They explain themselves too much. They reveal more than necessary. They try to justify things that didn't even need justification, all because they want to escape the tension of silence. But the quiet person doesn't feel that tension. They are comfortable with it, and that comfort gives them control. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. The fear people feel around smart, quiet individuals often has less to do with the quiet person, and more to do with their own insecurity. Silence acts like a mirror. When someone talks constantly, the focus stays on the conversation. But when someone listens quietly, the focus shifts inward. People start hearing their own thoughts. They begin questioning their words. They wonder if they are saying too much. And sometimes they realize they are. This is why many people label quiet individuals as intimidating, not because they are dangerous, but because they make others more aware of themselves. And self-awareness can be uncomfortable, especially for people who prefer distraction. But there is an important lesson hidden inside all of this. Silence itself is not power. Awareness is. A quiet person who observes carefully can understand social dynamics much faster than someone who constantly talks. But that ability can be used in two very different ways. It can be used for wisdom, or it can be used for manipulation. So how do you recognize when someone is simply quiet and when someone is quietly analyzing you? Pay attention to patterns. A thoughtful person listens, but still shows empathy. Their silence feels calm rather than strategic. A manipulative person listens with a different energy. They ask questions, but reveal almost nothing about themselves. They seem interested mainly in collecting information. And when you speak, they rarely share their own vulnerabilities. The conversation becomes one-sided. If you ever feel like you are revealing everything while the other person remains a mystery, pause for a moment. Ask yourself something simple. Why am I doing all the talking? Sometimes the best response to silence is not more talking. It is your own silence. Because psychological balance returns when both people become comfortable with quiet moments. You don't need to fill every pause. You don't need to reveal every thought. And you don't need to prove anything through constant conversation. In fact, the moment you become comfortable with silence, something interesting happens. The power dynamic shifts. You stop feeling pressured to explain yourself. You stop trying to impress others. And suddenly you begin observing more than you speak, the same way those quiet individuals do. But here's the final twist. The reason smart, quiet people often appear powerful is not because they dominate conversations. It's because they don't need to. They are not chasing attention. They are not trying to prove intelligence. They are simply present, watching, understanding. And sometimes the person who understands the room the best is the one who spoke the least. So the next time you feel uneasy around a quiet person, ask yourself a deeper question. Are they truly intimidating? Or is your mind simply uncomfortable with what it cannot predict? Because in a world full of noise, opinions, and constant talking, silence becomes something rare. And rare things always attract attention. Sometimes curiosity, sometimes respect, and sometimes fear.